Imagine for a moment a tiny insect.
Okay.
It's no larger than your fingernail, just living its life quietly attached to a prickly pear cactus in the Americas.
Right. Pretty unassuming.
Exactly. Now, imagine that this specific, completely unassuming little bug crosses a vast ocean and completely alters the trajectory of European art.
Wow.
Yeah, it changes the global economy and even like the physical manifestation of power.
It's wild to think about.
It really is. Or imagine a rough, unpolished blue rock. It's mined deep in the treacherous, jagged mountains of Afghanistan. It gets loaded onto a camel, travels thousands of miles through deserts and over freezing mountain passes. It changes hands dozens of times and eventually becomes the single most sacred color in Italian Renaissance paintings.
Honestly, it sounds like the premise of a fantasy novel.
Right.
Like where magical items shape the fate of kingdoms or something.
Yeah.
But I mean, everything you just described is entirely historical.
Yeah.
We are talking about physical materials crossing vast distances, yes. But if we look closer, what is truly traveling isn't just the insect or the rock.
Right.
It is human meaning.
And that invisible, epic journey of meaning is exactly what we are unpacking today.
Yes.
We're taking a deep dive into a stack of historical notes and a truly fascinating paper titled The Journey of Symbols.
It's a great paper.
So good. And our goal here isn't to just rattle off a timeline of art history for you. Our mission is to fundamentally change how you view the spread of culture, trends, and ideas in your own daily life.
Because the core premise of these sources, it really challenges how we're usually taught history.
Definitely.
Traditionally, we learn that cultural exchange is simply about moving physical objects across a map. A merchant takes a clay pot from city A, sells it in city B, and that is basically the end of the story.
Right, just simple commerce.
Exactly. But this research proposes that cultural exchange can actually be mapped as if it were a biological process.
Which is crazy.
It argues that human civilization operates like thoughts moving through a giant global brain.
And that is the concept that immediately grabbed me.
Yes.
Because whether you are sitting there scrolling on your phone and sharing a meme, or, you're lacing up a very specific brand of sneakers, or even just deciding how to decorate your living room.
You're doing it too.
Yes. You are actively participating in this massive global neural network. You are a living, breathing node in this giant brain.
To really see how colors, artistic motifs, and flags move across the world, we first have to ground ourselves in the biological analogy our sources use.
Makes sense.
So the paper introduces an analytical framework called the Brain Kinematics Model, or BKM. And that's alongside something called continuity theory.
Okay, let's unpack this, because I have to admit, when I first read the words brain kinematics model, my eyes almost crossed.
Oh, totally.
It sounds incredibly dense.
It is definitely heavy academic terminology, but the visualization is actually quite intuitive once you get into it. Imagine the entire global cultural field. So every society, every city, as the cortex of a human brain.
The outer layer, basically.
Right. And the trade routes, the shipping lanes, and today's, fiber optic media networks, those are the neural pathways connecting different regions of the brain.
Got it.
And the actual things that travel along those pathways, so the pigments, the melodies, the folklore, those are the memory units.
So instead of thinking about history as just merchants hauling stuff around, it's more like sending a computer zip file.
Oh, I like that.
Let's say a society experiences a specific tension or a collective need. Maybe they desperately want to express the idea of divine authority or profound grief.
Right, an abstract feeling.
Yeah, they have this abstract, complicated feeling, so they package that feeling into a physical symbol or a color. They basically zip it up into a file and they send it out across the network.
Your zip file analogy maps perfectly onto what the paper calls a strain
A
package.
strain package.
Yeah. In the framework of BKM, cognitive activity in the global brain emerges from these units carrying memory, emotion, and dynamic potential.
Okay.
And the text outlines a specific 5-stage cultural strain cycle for how a society processes a thought.
Let's hear it.
Stage 1 is strain generation. Just like you said, a cultural need creates a collective tension.
Right. A society feels something missing and needs to say something about it.
Exactly. Then comes stage 2, which is strain packaging.
Zipping the file.
Yes, that abstract meaning becomes embedded into a material form. So a halo in a painting, a specific type of fabric, or maybe a dragon motif.
Okay, that makes sense.
Stage 3 is strain propagation, which is the actual travel of the symbol through those neural pathways.
The file is sent over the network.
You got it. Then stage 4 is strain interaction. This is the critical moment where the incoming symbol actually collides with a new local cultural field.
Oh, interesting.
And finally, stage 5 is strain relaxation. This is when the new meaning stabilizes, the tension dissipates, and the receding culture reaches a new equilibrium.
I want to pause on stage 4 for a second, the collision part.
Sure.
Because my immediate thought is, like, do cultures just blindly download these zip files and extract the meaning exactly as it was intended?
That's a great question.
Like, if a viral video format jumps from one internet subculture to another, the new group doesn't just copy the joke.
No, never.
They remix it to make fun of their own specific problems, you know? People are way too stubborn to just accept a symbol as is.
You've hit on a major focus of the research here. Cultural transmission is never a passive act of copying.
Right.
The sources describe this interaction as a selective resonance process.
Resonance.
Yeah, when a symbol arrives in a new place, it acts like a tuning fork vibrating at a certain frequency.
Wait, if I'm thinking about how a tuning fork works, a tuning fork only makes a loud, sustained sound if you press it against something hollow, like a wooden box.
Yes.
So the traveling symbol is the metal fork, but the local culture is the wooden acoustic box.
That's a brilliant extension of the metaphor.
The box actually determines how loud the note gets and what it ultimately sounds like in that specific room, right?
That is spot on. The receiving culture is the acoustic chamber. It only amplifies the frequencies of the symbol that fit its own emotional, religious, or political architecture.
Wow.
The paper calls this a selective strain integration process.
Which is quite a mouthful.
It honestly is just a very academic way of saying that cultures are picky eaters.
Yeah.
They only chew on the parts of the symbol they actually have an appetite for.
They reject some parts, localize others.
Exactly, and fuse the rest with their own ancient traditions. The road transmits the possibility, but the local culture dictates the final meaning.
Okay, so if human culture operates like a giant brain, I have to imagine its very first thoughts were incredibly slow.
Oh, glacial.
What did it look like when a symbol tried to travel before the internet or before galleon ships? Let's look at the first historical era our sources cover, the pre-modern world.
The paper refers to this era as a deep integration system.
Okay.
We are talking about the vast age of camel caravans, rugged pilgrimage routes, and incredibly slow cultural osmosis.
And this brings us back to that rough blue rock, lapis lazuli.
Yes.
The journey of this stone is staggering to me. It was mined in the Sarisang Mountains in Central Asia. We are talking about incredibly treacherous terrain.
Very dangerous.
From there, it traveled across the overlapping networks of the Silk Roads. It was strapped to animals, traded in dusty desert markets, shipped across the Mediterranean, eventually arrived in Venice.
And even then, it wasn't done.
Right.
The physical processing was just as grueling as the travel. Artisans had to crush the stone, mix it with pine rosin and beeswax, and knead it like dough underwater for days.
Just to get the color out.
Just to extract the pure blue pigment.
Which became known as ultramarine, right? Literally meaning beyond the sea.
Exactly.
And because it went through all of that, it became famously reserved almost exclusively for painting the robes of the Virgin Mary in Renaissance art.
What's fascinating here is the symbolic logic that governed this specific era.
Okay.
The formula the sources provide is straightforward but profound. Rarity plus distance equals holiness.
Rarity plus distance equals holiness.
Because the neural pathways of this era, those treacherous caravan routes, were so incredibly slow, this was a low-frequency, high-depth transfer of cultural strain.
Gotcha.
The material was incredibly scarce, and the effort to procure it was monumental.
I mean, if you want something to feel special today, you make it hard to get.
Right.
Like a limited sneaker drop or an exclusive restaurant reservation. But imagine if that sneaker took 4 years to arrive by camel, crossed 3 empires, and was the only pair in all of Europe.
It changes the value completely.
What is so wild to me is how a material's sheer physical distance from its origin was translated by the receiving culture into spiritual distance. It was so hard to get and came from so far away that it felt literally otherworldly. It made it the absolute perfect color to represent the divine.
The paper frames this using the language of continuity theory.
Which is what exactly?
It's basically a way of asking, how does an idea survive the trip and settle into its new home?
Oh, okay.
Because the propagation was so agonizingly slow, the symbol had the time to achieve what they call deep relaxation.
Deep relaxation.
Yeah. It wasn't a fleeting seasonal trend. The receiving culture had the time to fully digest this blue pigment and permanently embed it into its sacred visual language.
It reached equilibrium.
It achieved a long-term structural equilibrium, yes. The cultural brain had the time to slowly process the thought, encode it deeply into long-term memory, and just let it rest.
So that blue rock had time to settle into a deep, peaceful slumber in the European mind.
Beautifully put.
But the global brain didn't stay slow forever. As we move into the early modern era, the neural pathways get wider and the thoughts get louder, faster, and frankly, a lot more aggressive.
We transition now to the Renaissance and the explosion of early modern global exchange.
Yeah.
The paper calls this the amplified strain system.
Amplified strain.
The density of the network increases, the speed accelerates, and the exchange becomes highly asymmetrical.
Here's where it gets really interesting, and we return to our tiny insect living on the cactus.
Ah, yes.
This is cochineal. It is an insect native to the Americas that, when crushed, produces a breathtakingly brilliant red dye.
A very specific red.
Following the Spanish conquest, the Spanish Empire essentially monopolized this insect. It takes tens of thousands of these tiny bugs to make just a single pound of dye.
Which is just a massive scale of harvesting.
And yet it flooded into European markets. It was used in church vestments, the uniforms of royalty, luxury tapestries, and oil paintings. It completely took over the visual landscape.
It really did.
To me, this shift feels like upgrading from a slow dial-up internet connection to broadband. Suddenly, the data is moving so much faster, but the bandwidth is strictly controlled by a few massive monopolies.
You've hit the nail on the head with the bandwidth idea, because the actual carrier medium shifted entirely.
How so?
We moved away from fragmented merchant caravans passing goods hand to hand and moved toward direct transatlantic shipping.
Oh, right.
Brutal colonial extraction and centralized merchant finance.
So the network was physically different.
And because the physical network changed, the symbolic logic shifted alongside it. The formula was no longer about rarity and holiness.
What was the new equation?
The new equation was brilliance plus market value plus imperial access.
So with the blue rock, the immense slowness and difficulty made it holy. But with this red dye, things are moving much faster, ships are crossing oceans, and heavily armed empires are involved.
Exactly.
I'm guessing it didn't just peacefully become a sacred symbol like the lapis lazuli. It feels like the vibe would be much more arrogant.
It was incredibly arrogant. It's a complete flex of global control. Wearing that specific cochineal red wasn't just saying, hey, look at this beautiful color. It was communicating, I am so wealthy and my empire is so powerful that we dominate the oceanic trade routes required to harvest this color from another hemisphere and bring it to my tailor.
Man, so the meaning of the color was literally just power and extraction.
In BKM terms, the paper describes this as amplified strain, being forcibly injected into structured systems.
Okay.
The global brain was suddenly in a state of high cognitive load. The signals were louder and more demanding because they were backed by concentrated wealth and imperial force.
That makes total sense.
Because of this, the text notes that symbols in this era achieved only partial relaxation.
Partial relaxation.
Right. They never fully settled peacefully because they were constantly doing the active work of enforcing social hierarchies, class divisions, and colonial dominance.
Just constant tension.
There was always an underlying tension. The cultural brain was buzzing with the energy of global commerce.
It's like having a really intense, focused thought that you can't quite shake no matter how much you try to relax.
Yeah, exactly.
Which brings us, inevitably, to today. Because if the Silk Roads were a slow dial-up connection and the Renaissance was broadband controlled by colonial empires, the 21st century is a chaotic, ultra-fast, completely unencrypted Wi-Fi network where the symbols never, ever sleep.
We've arrived at the network age. The paper classifies the 21st century as a non-equilibrium symbolic system.
Non-equilibrium, so totally out of balance.
Yeah. The pathways are no longer dirt roads or even galleon ships. They are digital platforms, social media feeds, algorithmic recommendations, and 24-hour global mass media.
And the example the sources use to anchor this modern era is the rainbow flag.
Yes.
It was designed in 1978 by Gilbert Baker, who famously hand-dyed and stitched the very first ones.
Right.
But today, the symbol doesn't require physical fabric or ships to travel. It moves instantaneously as a digital hex code.
It's just pixels.
It is on phone screens in milliseconds. It's waved in massive street protests. It's adapted into corporate branding for a month. It's printed on fashion lines. It is everywhere all at once, globally.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the sources are highlighting a massive, fundamental historical shift in how meaning itself is generated.
Okay.
In the past, with lapis lazuli and cochineal, meaning was driven by scarcity. The power of the symbol came entirely from the fact that it was difficult to obtain.
Right.
Today, meaning is driven by circulation and attention.
That's a huge shift.
It really is. The power of a digital age symbol comes from mass repetition, extreme algorithmic visibility, and network resonance. We have moved from a scarcity-driven meaning to a circulation-driven meaning.
So what does this all mean for us? Because I have to push back a little here. There's a cynical way to look at this.
I know where you're going with this.
If symbols today are just constantly remixed, commercialized, fought over on social media, turned into disposable memes, and printed on cheap t-shirts, does that mean modern symbols are somehow cheaper? Are they less profound or less important than that sacred, ultra-rare blue of the Silk Roads?
It is a very natural assumption to make. But the paper argues strongly against the idea that modern symbols are cheaper.
Okay, why not?
They are not less profound. They are simply highly volatile. Think about the intense struggles over authenticity, identity politics, and cultural appropriation that surround modern symbols.
That's true. People get very heated.
People care deeply, sometimes violently, about them. The difference isn't the depth of feeling. The difference is the sheer speed of the network.
The speed changes everything.
In continuity theory terms, the 21st century is defined by persistent non-equilibrium.
Meaning the symbols never get to take a nap.
They never get the chance to relax or settle into a single, undisputed meaning. They exist in a state of continuous, high-frequency oscillation.
Because it's too fast.
Because the transmission is instantaneous, the moment a symbol is adopted by one group, it is immediately challenged, satirized, remixed, or counter-appropriated by another node in the network.
It's a constant tug of war.
Exactly. The global brain is firing on all cylinders at hyperspeed, constantly negotiating identity and conflict without a pause.
That is genuinely exhausting to even think about, but it completely changes how you look at the physical and digital world around you.
It really does.
Let's just recap the incredible journey we've explored today. We started with the slow, deep integration of blue stones crushed and carried on camel caravans, where immense physical distance translated into pure divinity.
The deep integration.
We moved to the imperial power of red insects, harvested by the thousands and loaded onto galleons, where color became a loud flex of global dominance and wealth.
Amplified strain.
And finally, we arrived at the instantaneous, ever-shifting digital flags of today, where meaning is generated by sheer, relentless global attention.
The mechanics of the global cultural brain remain the same across all of human history, but the sheer velocity of the thoughts has fundamentally changed the nature of our reality.
So, the next time you are scrolling through your feed and you see a viral fashion trend pop up, or a new meme format taking over, or even a heavily contested political symbol being argued about in the comments, I want you to remember, you are not just looking at a picture on a screen. You are looking at a strain package.
Exactly.
You are watching a thought trying to find balance in the grand, evolving, and chaotic global mind. You are watching the brain of civilization actively trying to process an idea.
This raises an important question, one that extends beyond the historical timeline of the paper and something I think we all need to deeply consider.
What's that?
We've established that the global brain is currently in a state of hyper-fast, incomplete relaxation. Our cultural symbols never fully settle. They never achieve that deep structural peace of the Silk Roads.
Right.
But what happens to a brain that never gets to sleep?
Oh, wow.
What happens when a neural network never gets the downtime required to consolidate its memories and process its trauma?
It burns out.
Maybe. If this chaotic, high-frequency flux is the permanent new state of human consciousness, maybe the next great luxury won't be a rare color, a spice, or a viral symbol. Maybe the ultimate status symbol of the future will simply be silence. The profound, unattainable privilege of disconnecting from the network entirely.
That is a lot to chew on, the luxury of turning the brain off.
It's something to think about.
But until then, whether it's a digital flag flashing across a screen in a millisecond or a tiny insect slowly crossing an ocean 500 years ago, the meaning only exists because we are all connected to the network. Keep your eyes open.